The Western Highway, a road that carries the second most freight of any in Australia and serves as a vital east-west connection on Australia's national road network. Not to be confused with the Great Western Highway that connects Sydney to Bathurst in New South Wales, of course. I drove the Western Highway from Melbourne to the South Australian border, and this is what it's like to drive on, as well as the places you'll come across along the way. But first, a little history. The Western Highway ultimately began in 1925 after legislation was passed that allowed for the declaration of state highways. It was cobbled together from roads that connected Melbourne with the South Australian border at Surveyston, loosely following the modern route through Ballarat, Ararat, Stawell, Horsham, Dimboola and Nhill. Upgrades to the route were slowly completed, particularly from the mid-1960s onwards. In 1974, the Whitlam government then introduced the National Roads Act. This legislation introduced a scheme where designated national highways remained the responsibility of states for construction and maintenance, but approved money spent could be reimbursed by the federal government. As such, the Western Highway was then designated National Highway A8. Bypasses of key towns, including Bacchus Marsh, Melton and Ballarat, were carried out from the 1970s through to the early 2000s. By this time, population growth and the new M80 ring road had caused local traffic in Western Melbourne to increase significantly, from Rockbank to the M80 interchange. Thus, in 2009, the Deer Park bypass was completed, taking significant through traffic off the former alignment, which is now called Ballarat Road. Further duplication of the highway from Ballarat to Beaufort and from Beaufort to Buangor was then completed by 2016. Old alignments of the highway are designated either State Route 8, as on Ballarat Road, or C801 through to C805. So let's take a look at the entire length of the highway and discuss the towns and points of interest along the way. The highway begins as M8, exiting the M80 ring road at Ararat within the Brimbank local government area. It does so as a freeway standard dual carriageway road, taking the route of the Deer Park bypass. It crosses both the Geelong and Ballarat railway lines before converging with the old highway alignment at Caroline Springs, then turning west to continue through Melbourne's outer western suburbs. Despite this 2009 bypass, this section of the M8 is typically congested in the morning and afternoon peak for several hours at a time, particularly at the interchange points. The outer western suburbs of Mount Atkinson, Mount Cottrell, Rockbank and Cobblebank showcase some of Melbourne's finest urban sprawl. Brown new housing estates spring up amongst paddocks of thistle, old cars, dilapidated homesteads and general rubbish. Owing to the significant population growth here that is expected to continue for many years, planned upgrades to this section of the M8 include removal of current at-grade intersections and widening works. The M8 soon reaches Melton, where the old alignment is designated C801 and travels through the heart of Melton and then onwards towards Bacchus Marsh through the windy Anthony's Cutting before rejoining M8. The current alignment travels to the south, cutting a path through Melton's suburbia along a fairly substantial land reservation, with two diamond interchanges providing access to Melton itself. Melton was originally a small town that benefited from the gold rush traffic heading west. However, population growth exploded from the 1960s onwards, and it was officially named a satellite city of Melbourne. Today it forms a major outer western suburb of Melbourne, with planned upgrades to the M8 and electrification of the railway line aiming to improve its transport connections, and the new Melton Hospital is finally under construction as the area has become more marginal at the state and federal level for the Labor Party. It retains a strip shopping character that newer outer western suburbs seem to lack. It reminded me of Werribee in that sense when I was driving through. Leaving Melton, the M8 continues west towards the peri-urban town of Bacchus Marsh within the Shire of Moorabool. The old alignment, now designated C802, branches off on a southerly course towards the town's main centre before rejoining the M8 at the western end of town. The M8 itself descends from the hinterland to the east of town past several horticultural farms and even a turf growing operation. Scenic views of the surrounding countryside and the town of Bacchus Marsh greet you when travelling from either direction. Again, The M8 traverses a large land reservation within the town boundary and encounters an interchange with C704, where turning south takes you to Geelong and heading north takes you to the growing Macedon Rangers town of Gisborne. Bacchus Marsh itself has transitioned from a gold rush stopover to a market garden town to the modern community city that it is today, being also the largest town within the Moorabool Shire. While its current population of about 8,000 hasn't grown significantly since the 1990s, its satellite suburbs, including Hopeton Park, Mattingley and Parwan, are growing rapidly, with many new estates visible from the M8 on the west side of town in particular. I noted when driving through, Bacchus Marsh's narrow main street takes a decent amount of heavy vehicle traffic, and much of the town's services were centrally located. I imagine the local traffic here could get quite bad for a town of its size. The M8 continues west and climbs the Pentland Hills, where the old alignment runs largely parallel before rejoining the M8 at Parkes Reservoir, where the current alignment was completed in the mid-1960s, one of the first bypasses. Having climbed to an elevation of about 420 metres, the M8 passes to the north of Ballan, which can be accessed via C803, which subsequently winds its way through Gordon before veering north to rejoin M8. The M8 interchange with Geelong-Ballan Road offers drivers the chance to access Geelong via Anarchy to the south, or the picturesque Central Highlands town of Daylesford to the north. Ballan itself is a much smaller town than Bacchus Marsh, but once again benefited significantly from gold rush traffic and is popular with Melbourne commuters today. It has a quaint character along the main street with some beautiful old cottages, but more dense and modern development seems to be occurring to the southern side of the town towards the railway line. From Ballan through to Wallace, the road can be quite dangerous due to ice and heavy fog on frosty winter mornings, so take care if driving early in the morning. The M8 meanders onwards towards Ballarat, bypassing the small towns of Wallace and Buangor to the north before approaching Ballarat east. C291 forms part of the old alignment that travels through these towns to the south and rejoins the freeway at Lee Creek. Ballarat City was bypassed in the mid-1990s, with C805 branching off at Woodman's Hill and charting a route through central Ballarat via Victoria Street, Mare Street and Sturt Street before passing Cardigan Village as Remembrance Drive and finally rejoining the M8 at Lake Burrumbeet. Meanwhile, the M8 briefly loses freeway standard at Woodman's Hill near this interchange, where plans exist to upgrade this section. Once back to a freeway, the M8 splits Brown Hill in two and then largely forms Ballarat City's northern border, with the exception of Miners Rest, where population growth has pushed the original township further south towards the freeway. The M8 encounters several interchanges whilst bypassing Ballarat. The A300 Midland Highway allows access to central Ballarat, while turning north it is signed with control cities of Creswick and Bendigo. Ultimately, the A300 runs southeast to Geelong via Meredith, whilst going north takes you all the way to Mansfield via Shepparton and Benalla through the Midlands of Victoria, if you will. Then, C287 offers access to Ballarat's western suburbs, or a turn to the north takes drivers through the goldfields towns of Miners Rest, Clunes, Talbot and Maryborough. The Mildura train line is also crossed, on which V-Line currently offers a passenger service as far as Maryborough. Finally, the B220 Sunraysia Highway commences off M8 with control cities of Learmonth, St Arnaud and finally Mildura, although the Sunraysia Highway ultimately ends just south of Oyen at an interchange with the A79 Calder Freeway. A proposed Stage 2 and 3 of Ballarat Link Road aims to ultimately connect the Western, Glenelg and Midland highways to the west of Ballarat, but that might become a topic of another video, as there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Ballarat. From here, M8 continues as a dual carriageway thanks to the 2015 and 16 upgrades, although the freeway standard for controlled access is definitely no longer maintained. The landscape becomes flatter and significant grazing and cropping land use is apparent, as well as the development of wind farms. The M8 bypasses Stawell, where you can visit the birthplace of former Prime Minister James Scullin, and then enters into the gold mining town of Beaufort within the Pyrenees Shire. Beaufort lies at the foothill of the Pyrenees Mountains, and the local economy today depends much on logging to the north, sheep grazing around the district, and through traffic from Melbourne to the Grampians. Beaufort serves as a popular stopping point for tourists, as the town has not yet been bypassed by the M8, despite the planning and route alignment being long completed. The town came under threat from a fast-moving bushfire in February 2024, causing a mass evacuation, but remarkably little property loss. From Beaufort, the freeway recommences just outside town, and travellers are treated to some excellent views of Mount Cole and Mount Langi-Goran. We head west towards Buangor, bypassed in the 2016 duplication works that attracted controversy over the removal of significant old trees along the new alignment. The duplication ends east of Ballarat, and the designation changes to A8, often signed still as National A8, from here being a nationally declared highway. A small section near Buangor has become notorious recently for fatal crashes, and the speed limit briefly dips to 80. Plans to duplicate the highway from Buangor as far as Stawell have existed for nearly a decade, but works have yet to begin. We approach the regional city of Ararat along the A8 and come to some more important junctions within the town's limits. Firstly, the railway heading south to Maruna is crossed. This standard gauge line then splits off at the Maruna junction, where one line continues on towards the port of Portland via Hamilton and the other towards Geelong via Cressy. Thus, the line we cross here actually forms part of the Melbourne to Adelaide standard gauge route followed by the overland train. A roundabout at the eastern end of Ararat sees C222 commence off to the left, taking drivers to Hall's Gap via Moyston and Pomona before swinging north through the upper Grampians and finally rejoining A8 near Horsham. In the centre of Ararat, the B180 Pyrenees Highway is crossed. A left turn heads south towards Glen Thompson where the road terminates at an intersection with the Glenelg Highway. A right turn takes drivers all the way to the A89 Calder Freeway junction at Elphinstone via Avoca, Maryborough, Castlemaine and Newstead. A planned A8 bypass of Ararat to the north has been studied and somewhat planned, but no funding is available for construction as of yet. Ararat itself was founded as a gold city, but by the 1920s that had fizzled out, leading to a slow population decline, which has only been modestly arrested since the 1990s. Today, Ararat is home to a large correctional facility, several wind farms, and a now thriving service industry, as well as remaining a service hub for local primary industry, wool being the most significant. Ararat also serves as a gateway to the Grampians region, with its national parks, numerous wineries, and of course its natural beauty. The A8 swings north from Ararat into the scrubby, rocky woodlands that dominate the land immediately to the north of the Grampians. We head towards Great Western, another small town awaiting its proposed bypass, but for now, the famous wine town hosts the A8 as its main street, with the imposing Seppelt winery facility and its famous Shiraz plantings visible to the left. The A8 continues as a single-lane divided highway in a northwest direction towards Stawell, within the northern Grampians Shire, where the highway largely bypasses the town to the south through Stawell's industrial estate, but some amenities are also available for travellers. C216 branches off to the left, signed as Grampians Road, which provides the most convenient route to the Grampians National Park and Hall's Gap from the Western Highway. From there, C216 continues south to Dunkeld, where it also meets the Glenelg Highway. Stawell itself is known mostly for the Stawell Gift, an annual foot race carnival held over the Easter weekend that contributes significantly to the local economy. Stawell is also notable for maintaining an ongoing gold mining tradition, with one mine currently still operating. Stawell's main street, I noticed, is distinctively windy and narrow, but the views of the Grampians from the high points in town were magnificent. B210 branches off to the north, taking drivers through Glenorchy, Rapanyup and Minyup before terminating in the northern Wimmera town of Warwick-Nabil. At the small village of Dadwells Bridge, one encounters perhaps one of Australia's most distinctive roadside attractions, the Big Koala. Here, some fire damage is evident from early 2024, where firefighters were remarkably successful in asset protection efforts. At this point, we have firmly left the highlands and the Grampians regions, and we are now in the Wimmera, where cereal cropping forms an important part of the local and indeed the wider Victorian economy. At Horsham, two major junctions appear. Firstly, the Henty Highway, named after a famous pioneer family in the region whose history with the local Aboriginal population is under increasing scrutiny, particularly from a living descendant based in Portland. Taking a sharp left in Horsham's southern outskirts, the A200 Henty Highway heads south towards the Rocklands Reservoir, passing through Cavendish and Hamilton before converging with the A1 just north of Hayward. Before reaching central Horsham, the A8 crosses the Wimmera River, which rises in the Pyrenees and flows on from Horsham to Dimboola and Ararat before emptying into Lake Hindmarsh. The B200 Henty Highway begins in central Horsham as a right turn off the A8. It leaves Horsham in a northeasterly direction, concurrent with the B240 Wimmera Highway, before heading north to Warwick-Nabil and Hopetoun and terminating at a junction with the B220 Sunraysia Highway near Lascelles. The B240 Wimmera Highway is a major east-west connector between the Wimmera and central Victoria that crosses the A8 in central Horsham. The left turn-off ultimately leads to the South Australian border via the climbing town of Nadimuck, Edenhope and Apsley. Along McPherson Street in central Horsham, the A8, B240 and A200 run concurrently before the former two branch off, and the B240 leads up to the A79 junction at Morong via Murtoa, Rapanyup and St Arnaud. A Horsham bypass has long been proposed to form a ring road northwest of the urban area, but I personally doubt that will occur before the highway is duplicated to Stawell, at least. Horsham itself is a large rural service town for the surrounding agricultural district that is known for wheat, canola and legume production. Being the largest town on the A8 between Ballarat and the border, Horsham also serves as a health and services hub for the wider Wimmera region. Its population of just over 20,000, including surrounding districts, actually makes it the 11th most populous city in Victoria. After Horsham, the A8 proceeds mostly north, passing through the small town of Pimpernel before turning west again on the approach to Dimboola, within Hindmarsh Shire. With the Melbourne to Adelaide Railway now running near the highway again, many grain silos are visible along the highway. At this point, the sandier red soil associated with desert plains also becomes noticeable. To the southwest of the A8 at Dimboola lies the Little Desert National Park, an important tourist attraction in the area that was heavily impacted by a large bushfire in early 2025 that forced the evacuation of Dimboola Township. Dimboola itself is bypassed to the north by the A8, and it's a thriving little town that relies heavily on agricultural production and tourism for its local economy. By this stage of my drive, the school holiday traffic that was likely Grampians bound from Melbourne thinned out considerably once I passed Stawell. More and more I began to notice too the sight of firefighting uniforms hung against fences alongside signage that tended to express dissatisfaction with the state Labor government's volunteer emergency services levy. One gets the sense that the councils aren't all that happy with it either, as they've done very little to remove that kind of paraphernalia, even on public land. From this point, the road passes through much less populated areas and is largely surrounded by flat agricultural plains. The next major town on the route is Nhill, which lies approximately halfway between Melbourne and Adelaide along the Western Highway. This makes it a popular stopping place, particularly for trucks, who regularly use the town as a changeover point in a similar manner to Tarcutta on the Hume in New South Wales. However, this one doesn't appear to see anywhere near as much use. Perhaps I came at the wrong time. Meat processing and agriculture also serve as key employers in the region. The A8 continues its march west towards the border. It encounters Carnarvon, the last proper town before the border. It's a small rural service town that is heavily reliant on livestock and agricultural farming, and also features a community-owned roadhouse service station. Very near the South Australian border, the A8 runs past Serviceton, a now almost deserted locality that was subject to a long-running border dispute between the South Australia and Victoria colonies, resulting from inaccurate original surveying of the declared border. The town also hosted the locomotive changeover between the Adelaide-Wolseley line and the Western Standard Gauge line in Victoria. As such, a large station building remains on the line today, although the overland passenger services no longer stop there. Just beyond Serviceton, we finally pass the border, and the road becomes the Duke's Highway, and our trip is over. So there you have it, Victoria's Western Highway, a key connecting road from the eastern seaboard to South Australia and beyond. I found the road condition was quite poor in parts, but not quite so bad as I have experienced over the last couple of years. With so much freight traffic utilising the route, and the opportunity for population growth in the towns along it, duplication of the Western Highway to at least Horsham and bypasses of Ararat, Beaufort and Horsham are much needed improvements. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. I plan to record many more like it, beginning with further travels within Victoria, and then onto some interstate routes. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this sort of content. Like this video if it was any good, and comment your thoughts and experiences below. If you're a local to one of the towns I explored, I'd love to hear any further points that I missed. Thanks, and see you guys in the next video.